Hello everyone, I'm B-Dude, and welcome to a completely factual and totally not biased list, ranking all of Edgar's tools from 8 to 1. Edgar has various tools he gets throughout the game, and with a varying degree of usefulness and effects. We will be ranking these off of two aspects: accessibility, how early can you get the tool, and how easy is it to get. 2. Usefulness, is the tool relevant, and for how long throughout the game. One thing to remember is, although the tools are cool and all that, magic ends up being the end-all be-all for effectiveness in this game generally. There are much better options than what most of these tools give. However, we are going to be looking at them as a standalone option. Have fun with it, and let's get right into the list. Coming in at number 8, we have the Debilitator. I find this to be the worst of Edgar's arsenal. It has an unblockable ability to add a weakness to any enemy. The weaknesses do stack, so you can make an enemy weak to all 8 elements. This has some use in speedrun routes and low-level runs, but for the average casual runner, there really are so many better options. To get this weapon, you need to steal it from the right crane fight after the Magitech factory for the earliest chance to get it, which is a 12.5% chance to steal. And it's also the rare steal. If you don't get that, the next spot you can get it is the Missile Bay during the IAF segment, also a rare 12.5% chance to steal. Other than that, you're not going to be getting one until the World of Ruin Figaro Castle. You could steal one from an armored weapon in Ancient Castle, but since the only way to get to the Ancient Castle is through Figaro Castle, you might as well just buy it from Figaro Castle. So as far as accessibility goes, I give it a 3 out of 10. Usefulness, as we mentioned, unless it's for a challenge or a speedrun, isn't super high, so I'm going to give it another 3 out of 10. Making this entire tool a 3 out of 10. Coming in at number 7 is the Noiseblaster. This is an AoE that confuses on all enemies. It does have a 100% success rate and is unblockable, but obviously it will fail on enemies that are immune to confuse. Not a bad early game or low level run tool to help prevent some damage. However, any physical damage will break the confuse, and most of what you have for the first good quarter of the game tends to be physical. As far as accessibility goes, I'll give it a solid 9 out of 10. As soon as you get to Figaro Castle, you can buy it. There are steals you can do to get it as well, but they're not extremely optimal, as you can either steal from the left crane in Magitech Factory, or you can get another steal in Kefka's Tower. It should be available to buy in Figaro Castle throughout the entire game as well. Usefulness, however, I'm not a very big fan of if it isn't doing damage, it isn't really doing much for me kind of person. So if it isn't doing damage, I don't really want to use it too much. Since we have a lot of decent options even early game, the usefulness I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Overall, this weapon isn't really much better than a 4 out of 10 despite the fact that it's easy to get, and you'll see why because we have some good stuff coming up. And coming in at number 6 is the Air Anchor. This weapon can cause heat to an enemy, which means they will die the next time they attack. It's kind of like a delayed instant death. Wait, delayed instant? Anyway, it is unblockable, but does fill an enemy's immune to death. It sounds like a pretty good weapon on paper, but there are a lot of enemies that are going to be immune to death, and ones that aren't can be killed in much easier ways via magic. The biggest issue with this tool is where you get it. You only have access to it in the World of Ruin. The two options are climb the Cultist Tower, and hopefully you have Mog to skip the encounters or you're going to be here for a while. The other option is you can go and get it in Kefka's Tower and steal it off of a Gamma. Both aren't exactly ideal, and it's more of a tool you kind of grab along the way for completion's sake. The accessibility is going to be a gross 1 out of 10. Easily the worst tool to get throughout the game. Usefulness we can give a 5 out of 10 depending on if you know what is immune to death or not. Overall, this is going to be another 4 out of 10 weapon, hard carried by the fact that low level runs and casual players alike can have fun with nuking enemies to death in a single shot. Rounding out the bottom half of our list, at number 5 is the Auto Crossbow. This may seem like a bit of a meme pick, but hear me out. The Auto Crossbow ignores split damage, it has a decent attack power of 125, and it hits everything on the screen. You can buy and steal it from various places, but there's literally no point. Edgar starts with it. That makes the accessibility a 10 out of 10. You don't need to find it, you don't need to buy it, you are just given it. The usefulness actually shines pretty hard early game as well, and it's probably one of more versatile tools you have until you revisit Fagaro Castle after the Kefka and Narch section. The auto crossbow does drop off shortly after this, as you get better stuff, but even with the strength build, it can be somewhat useful. So overall, the useful of this tool, I'm going to give a 5 out of 10. Simple yet effective, 6 out of 10 tool. Now we get into the 4 good tools. Coming in at the bottom of the top 4, at number 4, is the chainsaw. Okay, first off, before everyone grabs the pitchforks and torches, hear me out. The chainsaw is essentially a slightly stronger drill with a 25% chance of instant death. We will go over the math a little bit more, but essentially, it's just as strong as the drill if you get the instant death chance on a boss once every 4 attacks. Plus, you get a wasted turn. Not sure if it's obvious, but I really hate instant death chances and I hate losing out on damage. This weapon does ignore defense in rows, so you can stay safe in the back row. You get this weapon after you get the drill, albeit very shortly after. You just need to run around Zozo until you figure out the clock puzzle on one of the towers. Or, your dear friend Bree Dude here can tell you. It's 6-10-50. There, now I've saved you a ton of time running around Zozo talking to liars. Accessibility is a 5 out of 10, and usefulness is still around a 7 out of 10, so I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10 tool. It's a solid tool, I just feel the need for consistent damage throughout the game, and we have much better options for that. Coming on in at number 3 is Better Chainsaw, the drill. Okay, here we go. I find the drill better than the chainsaw for a few reasons. First off, the consistent damage is nice for fights that can sometimes get down to the wire. Although the attack power is 199 versus the chainsaw's 251, we've already established that 1 instant fail in 4 attacks is the same as the drill damage in 3 attacks. Plus, you don't waste a turn. The consistency is what's really beautiful to me. I also find the animation is just a little bit cooler. The drill also ignores defense in row, which allows you to hang out in the back row and be safe while still doing some pretty good damage. You have to wait until after the Kefka and Narch section, which brings accessibility down to about a 7 out of 10, but then you can buy it in the castle. It's an easy buy along the way, but you still have to go through a good chunk of the game without it. But the usefulness on bosses is way too good to pass up. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 usefulness and a beautiful 8 out of 10 tool overall. Highly recommend for every playthrough. So now we have the second best tool in the game, and this is Flash. It's got no split damage as well on a magical weapon, which is pretty good. Especially when we get into the part where you need a whole bunch of magical abilities, but we don't really have any meaningful magic yet. It absolutely obliterates. Since magic is such a broken stat in this game, it's pretty nice to have something that A, does non-elemental damage, and B, does it on everything. This means that nothing can absorb it, nothing can negate it, it just does damage. You can grab this tool about the same time that you grab the drill, so the accessibility is also the same with a 7 out of 10. The usefulness is a bit higher since it's a good AoE magical ability. With the complement tool of the drill, however, you're basically set for almost everything for most of this game. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10, coming out just a little bit ahead of the drill due to the fact that it does hit more than one enemy. Now we have the best tool in the game. Coming in at number 1 is the Bioblaster. So this tool for the Super Nintendo would actually rank a little bit lower for me, but due to how damage ticks work in the Pixel Remaster, it's going to go up quite a bit considering that Pixel Remaster is technically the more definitive version these days. The damage ticks, especially with very fast ATB on, is actually bonkers. So you have an AoE tool that inflicts poison, and you get those ticks going absolutely crazy on top of the other damage that you're doing, even during animation times. You get this tool on your first visit as well, so the accessibility is a 9 out of 10. Since poison can be used in quite a few places to a wide degree of success, it's also a good thing to open up with and just let the damage ticks go crazy. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10 usefulness for a 9 out of 10 weapon. The only downfall for this is that there are some enemies that can't be poisoned. So there is my list of all the tools in Final Fantasy VI. Completely non-biased and completely factual. But how wrong do you think I was? And why are you so mad that the chainsaw wasn't number 1? Put it in the comments below. Make sure to also subscribe so you can see more stuff coming up. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye now.